It's Friday, October 6th. This is an end of the day and end of the week SPY recap, and today we end up with a inside bar failure that results in a 3 bar. In other words, we took out the low of the previous inside bar. We failed to go lower in our targets, came back up through the range, and then took out both the low and the high of that bar, then continued to 1-2 more targets after that. And on the weekly chart, which is something I track very closely, we end up with a nice hammer-looking green bar, which kind of sends expectations to continue higher into next week to at least take out that high. Here's the very next target. There's a big fair value gap in here where price can go. And as the weeks now go on, we're going to judge what kind of weekly continuation develops. I mean, it's possible that this little hammer bar could be the complete bottom here of this pullback, and we go up, up, up all the way to the top. But there are still bigger picture things in play that show we could hit targets up here or into that gap and then fail and reverse lower. And if that happens, there's still some very interesting bigger picture targets down below, but it's going to require the weekly chart now failing in some way, either failing to even break out above that high, which I would think very high probability when you see this type of a bar, you're going to likely at least probe higher. Then we'll kind of just go day by day, week by week. Do we hit this target? Do we come into this area? What kind of green bar might close next week? You start thinking ahead a little bit, but for now, we're going to think up for sure and play that, and that's the key. We'll see what unfolds. Is it going to be 3 little weak bars that barely, eat into this thing and then that can roll over? Or is it going to be strong green bars? Or is it going to be no green bars? In other words, you can't predict, but you can certainly, you know kind of what to look for. Like I said, in the big picture now, the monthly chart, even though it started down, a big red bar last month, so you expected that low to be taken out, it was. So it's kind of done its job, and now you see we're a little green, and we have this yellow line here, which is the open of the month. So as long as we stay above that yellow line now in subsequent days and weeks, we'll be bullish, but we know we have to really, at this point, since we took it at the low of that bar, we have to get above the midpoint of that bar to even begin to think of getting up there. That would kind of be like a 3 bar on the monthly basis. So as long as we just come up and don't really take out the midpoint, any move down still keeps us in that quarterly outlook where we had a 2 down quarter, and that means for 3 months we have a target way down here eventually. But we're going to have to see things turn red before we get back on that, into that mode of being on the sell side. So let's just see what unfolds. We have that good reference point now. If I look at the reference point on the weekly chart, that's right here on the yellow line. On the daily chart, that's the open of the week right here. So as long as we stay above this yellow line, the month and everything else goes up. And you can see we definitely have room to continue higher towards these gaps and everything else. And yet it is kind of a 3 bar. So if anything, it looks like we got a lower low here, and we'll likely get a higher high into this pivot at a minimum, and then we'll kind of see where things go from there. So in terms of today was a classic example of how everything comes together in the method that I like to use. Again, first of all, I was discussing for the last 3 days how inside bars, I'm always keeping an eye on failures. And failures mean you kind of cut down, you probe, the higher low, and then you reverse and get to the midpoint of that bar. So it was it was perfect kind of setup here when you looked at the intraday structure. First of all, we had the economic news that brought price very strongly down near the open, but pulled up a little bit towards the open. And, you kind of expected it to definitely continue lower after this big drop. So on the first bar, we kind of had a red bar that didn't do much. I discussed how I bought some puts here on bar 2 when I saw it breaking down on the 5-minute chart, expecting it to come down here. And it tried, but then we set up a hammer and then we started up. So I had to, take a small loss on that trade. And that's the way, you could have played. Really, price action was telling you to play it to start. What happened was when you got this big green bar, this is the key, and this is how my methodology, brings it all together. When we came above the first bar high, that not only took out the first bar high to kind of set the structure of the day to the upside, it also, on the daily chart, it showed after the failure of taking out that daily low, not reaching its target, we came up to the midpoint of that bar. So at the same time, you had reaching the midpoint of that bar, which projected to the top of the range, and you had the intraday structure kind of turning up. So that's why this was a strong buy. I bought some calls here, and as discussed, we came up, we took out the yesterday's high, the pre-market high, followed through much further than that, got a pullback and a second push up. And it was a very strong day to the upside. And, even if you took a small loss here, there was a very good reversal play right in here to anticipate at least getting up to the top of this range. And obviously it extended a lot further. So that's how things end today. Big green bar to the upside. It is a 3-bar, so technically it is lower lows and higher highs, and who knows, maybe we broaden and we start lower. But I would say, given this chart, if you zoom it out a little bit, we're likely doing a little broader picture where these are the lower lows. That looks to be the higher high somewhere up in here. And then assuming that kind of develops and we play the long side a little bit, let's just see how things unfold. I'll stick with the upside. I'll be aware. And, when, a lot of times when you see this type of hammer bar on the weekly chart, it's really a pretty powerful reversal signal that can go on for a while. So it just might be one, it could be 2, 3 weeks, heading up here before we eventually maybe get a 2 up, 2 down, or a failure looking bar on the weekly chart. I don't know. And again, you can never predict, but for now, we're back to the upside until things change. And if things change and really can't, penetrate too high above our next target into this area here and fail, that next move down can really set a bigger picture, move lower. But that's something, it's a little bit way off now. So let's just see really what unfolds next week. Today, very good day to kind of realize that inside bar failure, and we will just expect higher into next week and kind of monitor things from there. And again, I think this high is pretty high probability we're going to be taken out in some form, a little follow through higher. And truthfully, you can see a trend line up here. So we could be heading up all the way into this gap area, as well. But we'll just let price action lead the way as always.